Alright, so welcome back to Dominion Dark Ages. I believe this is part 6 for what's in this box. So let's continue. Okay, so here we have Catacombs. Now this is probably a card I haven't played with too much, but I can't say for sure that I hate it. I think I'd like it if I played it with it more often. I just haven't played with it that much. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose one, put them into your hand, or discard them, and plus 3 cards. When you trash this, gain a cheaper card. So if this gets trashed, you'll gain a cheaper card. That's one thing I like about this expansion. Like I was saying, there's benefits for trashing cards. And if somebody was to trash one of your cards via an attack card, and this was the card you trashed, you'd get a cheaper card, so it wasn't a total loss. So that's kind of interesting. You get to look at the top 3 cards, and then you get to choose either to put those into your hand or discard them for 3 cards. So that's kind of cool. I like that. I like that a lot, even though I haven't played with it that much. I think I'd like playing with that quite a bit, at least once in a while. All right, then we have the Grave Robber. And so this card is very similar to Lurker in the sense that you can gain cards from the trash. So you choose one of these options. Either you gain a card from the trash costing from 3 to 6 and put it onto your deck, or trash an action card from your hand and gain a card costing up to 3 more than it. So that's kind of a cool aspect. If there are good cards in the trash, obviously Grave Robber is worth it to buy. And maybe you could use this maybe with the rats. You know, you could trash the rats and you could gain something costing up to 3 more than it. So you could use this to trash the rats and gain a gold, for instance, or something like that. Who knows? So this is definitely another card that could be very useful with the rats, the Grave Robber. And so this is a pretty cool card. I think I like this a lot more than Rogue. Even though Rogue is an attack card, I think I like this one more than Rogue, for sure. Because half the time when you play with Rogue, especially mid-game, it's no longer an attack card technically anyway. Then we have the Junk Dealer, where you get a card, you get an action, and you get a treasure. And that's pretty basic. But then you trash a card from your hand. So that's kind of cool. You get a card, you get a treasure, you get an action, and you trash a card from your hand. That's a pretty useful card at times as well. Not my favorite trashing card in this expansion, obviously, but it's definitely worth playing with. All right. Then we have the Count. Choose one, discard 2 cards, or put a card from your hand onto your deck, or gain a copper. Then choose one, plus 3 treasure, or trash your hand, or gain a duchy. So when you play this, you're actually going to get to do 2 different things, but the first options are you either discard 2 cards, you put a card from your hand onto your deck, which probably is better than discarding 2 cards, unless you're discarding a couple of victory cards or something like that, or you gain a copper. Well, sometimes I'll get a copper. You know, maybe I like my cards. Maybe I got good cards in my hand. And like I said, I'm a copper strategist, so most often the case is I'll gain a copper rather than the other 2. Unless I do have like 2 good cards, you know, that I want to discard, like estates or something, or provinces or whatever. But this is definitely what makes this card shine, is the second option, or should I say the second choose one. You either get 3 treasure, you can trash a card from your hand, or you gain a duchy. There have been times where I did gain a duchy. There have been times when I used the treasure, you know, got 3 treasure with this card. And there have even been times when I, you know, decided, ooh, I definitely need to trash this card. So I used it to trash a card from my hand. So this is a pretty cool card, for sure. And it's definitely very fun to play with and has a lot of stuff going on with it, for sure. But it's definitely a lot of fun. Now, there's still one more 5-costing card in the supply, but they're all very different. And there actually are 2 other action cards that cost 6 in this expansion. And we'll go over those last. But let's go over what is known as the Knights. So the Knights are all in the supply, and it's kind of random which card will be on top. It won't necessarily be the same Knight every time. You'll basically have to shuffle the Knights pile on their own, and then you'll put them all face down like this, and only the top card will be revealed. And so, you know, you'll only know which one is on top, basically. And then when you buy it or gain it, then they'll be like this, and then you'll just reveal what the next one is after that one was purchased to see what it was. And so some of these knights can be very useful, and some of them not nearly as much as others. There are definitely some that are I definitely like to go after more than others. So let's go over them. Now, one thing they all do one thing. They all do exactly the same thing, and then have another benefit usually. So this one is Dame Josephine. Each other player reveals the top 2 cards of their deck, trashes one of them costing from 3 to 6, and discards the rest. If a knight is trashed by this, trash this. And so that's one reason why I'm not a huge fan of knights, because you could get these knights, but then lose them. If your opponent ends up losing one of their knights, you're going to lose yours if you attack them with this, and they lose theirs. So they end up killing each other, basically. So obviously, that isn't super useful. But if you don't, if other players don't have too many knights, and you have a full deck of cards, that won't happen probably too often. But you never know. So the Dame Josephine is the only knight here that's worth 2 victory points. The other knights do not have victory points on them, just this one. So this is definitely one that you might go after because it's an action card that's going to give you 2 victory points, for sure. Then we have Dame Natalie. Now, we aren't going to go over everything. We're just going to go over what makes her different from the other knights. With this one, you may also gain a card costing up to 3. So she does everything else the other one just did, except, instead of getting 2 victory points, with her, you get to gain a card costing up to 3. So obviously not super useful as the last one. Then we have Sir Bailey. This one just gives you a card and an action as the additional benefit that makes it different from the first 2. So obviously not that great. Then we have Sir Destry. This one just gives you 2 cards. So once again, it's not super useful as, the first one we went over. Then we have Sir Vander. This one actually only has that as an action, trashing cards from 3 to 6. But when you trash this, you gain a gold. So this is definitely worth getting, because if you do end up losing the Sir Vander, at least you'll gain a gold when this was trashed. So that gives you a cool little benefit if it ends up getting trashed. Then we have Dame Sylvia, and this one just gives you 2 treasure. But then that's the only thing that makes it different from the other ones. Then we have Dame Anna. This one will allow you to trash up to 2 cards from your hand. But once again, that's the only thing that makes this one different from the other knights. Then we have Sir Martin. Well, this one just gives you 2 buys. Okay, now this is probably my favorite one here, Sir Michael. This is 2 attack cards in 1. This is the one I always try to go after the most, because it's 2 attack cards in 1. So each other player discards down to 3 cards in hand, and then each other player reveals the top 2 cards of their deck, trashes one of them costing from 3 to 6, and discards the rest. And then obviously if a knight is trashed by this, you'll trash this too. So this is pretty fun to play with. I like playing with Sir Michael because it's a militia, and then it's also a knight in 1 turn. 2 attacks in 1. And both of them are going to hit your opponents most likely. Unless, somebody else had a militia or a card similar to militia where they had to discard, down to 3 cards in hand. But obviously, most likely that won't be the case. And so this is a pretty fun one to play with. And that one is definitely the one I always go after the most. If I can get it, that is. And then we have Dame Molly. And this one just gives you 2 actions. And so, obviously, Dame Molly can be useful. And Sir Michael can be very useful. And if you had a lot of knights, let's say you had Dame Molly and you had, I don't know. Where is it? Sir Destry. You had both of these in the same hand at the same time, and you played both of them. You get 2 actions, you get 2 cards. So that they could work very well together, because then you get to play them twice and, get to trash some of your opponent's cards for sure. But on their own, this one's could be very useful. On its own, this one is very useful. And on its own, this one is very useful because it gives you victory points. But then the rest, you know, aren't as useful. They're basic, and a lot of the other cards, you know, give you +2 treasure anyways. You know, lots of cards give you +2 cards anyways. You know, this one just lets you gain a gold. So I guess that could be useful too, maybe. This one lets you trash cards. And if you have other cards in the expansion that let you trash cards, obviously this one isn't very useful. You know, and then you also have this one, and it's basic. So it's an attack card. It gives you a card in action, and that could be useful. But most of these on their own aren't super useful. Except for maybe, obviously, Sir Michael. That one is definitely the best, for sure. And that is the only reason why I would even bother trying to get my hands on these knights, is to get Sir Michael, and at least get to use it one time before it got killed by another knight. Alright, so there are 2 more cards left in this expansion to go over. So let's go over them. So there are 2 action cards costing 6 in this expansion. First we have the Hunting Grounds, and this one you'll get to draw 4 cards. So that's really cool. And then when you trash this, you either gain a duchy or 3 estates. So you get a duchy or 3 estates with this. That's pretty cool. I like that a lot if you were to trash this. So that's really cool benefit for trashing it. It could be very useful in the beginning of the game. At the end of the game, you could use it to gain a free duchy. That's really cool if it got trashed. And then we have the Altar. Trash a card from your hand and gain a card costing up to 5. This would be very useful with rats. You trash this, you trash rats with this after you got rid of most of your cards. And then you gain a card costing up to 5. And then, of course, since rats was trashed, you'd also get to draw a card. So that's really cool. So when you think about it, this is a very good card to play with almost every card in this expansion, because almost all of the cards here, when they're trashed, they give you a benefit, plus this would give you a benefit for trashing a card. So that's really cool. And that makes this one probably even better than, like, the Junk Dealer, for instance. So, anyways, that is all of the cards in this expansion. So I hope you guys liked this video, and we'll see you guys again soon.